and that'll be really helpful. So
no, we're now live on YouTube, Chair.
Perfect, thank you. Brilliant. So we'll crack on with the formal start of the meeting. So a formal good morning to everybody, and those that might be watching on YouTube as well. This is the June meeting of the Sustainable Communities EAP. We are going to go to the first item, which is apologies for absence, please.
I haven't received any apologies for absence.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is members' declarations of interest. So based on the items we've got on the agenda, does anybody have anything they need to declare? No, I can see shaking of heads, so that's good. Now, item number 3 is the minutes from the meeting held on the 10th of April. Hopefully those that were present at that meeting have had an opportunity to read through those and check that they're happy with them. I can see nodding of heads, so that is also good. Okay, so we're going to crack straight on to the first substantive item of the agenda, which is the local nature recovery strategy, which we're going to have an update on. And Andra Stockforth, who has been busily working away on this, is going to go through that with us. So over to you.
Can you all see the right screen, which is just the cover page? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we can
okay,
see.
I'm just going to mute though.
No, that's fine. For some reason my screen at this end is not quite playing ball, so let me just move that. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I'm here to give an update on the local nature recovery strategy for North Northamptonshire. And I have reported a couple of times now, I think, to this group, so it's an update. But for those of you that are new and might be wondering what a local nature recovery strategy is, it's a spatial strategy which aims to halt and reverse declines in biodiversity and deliver wider environmental benefits to the local population. So it's a bit similar to a local plan, but really focusing just on the biodiversity and nature aspects. And then the outputs of the local nature recovery strategy will enable landowners, land management, managers to better understand and determine if there are any actions for nature recovery that they could undertake that would have beneficial impacts on the land that they manage. So it's providing a lot of evidence to those stakeholders to be able to improve their land. It's saying my screen is paused. Is anyone able to help me with that?
We can see your screen, Andrea. It's just not on the slideshow.
Okay. Right. Sorry about this. I'm going to have to stop sharing and then reshare because it's not, for some reason, doing it quite how I expected it to do.
I can share if it helps.
Hopefully it's going to pop back up. It keeps saying your screen sharing is paused at the very top. Resume share, that might do it. Albeit it's now not on my screen at all. So Raj, if you're able,
it's okay. Yeah, I'll share it.
Useful. Yeah. Thank you.
Not to worry.
Sorry about this. I ran through it all this morning as well, making sure I knew where the right buttons were. So yeah, if we just move on to the next slide, that would be great. So I've explained a little bit about what the Local Nature Recovery Strategy, or LNRS, is, and it is a statutory requirement set out in the Environment Act, and both our council and West Northants Council have been designated responsible authorities to produce the LNRS. So it's not necessarily our document, but we're responsible for pulling it together with stakeholders and meeting the guidance that has been set out by DEFRA and Natural England. Now, the timeframe is moving rapidly on, and we are aiming to complete our first LNRS by March 2025. So it's not very far away, and I'll come along to a bit more detail of the timeline later in the slides. Raj, I guess I'm going to have to say next slide, please, every time. So just a bit of our story so far. And like Councillor Pentland says, we have been beavering away on quite a lot of work in the recent past. So we do have our governance structure agreed, and that sets out that we have an oversight group, which is now meeting monthly, and on that we have Councillor Pentland and various other senior officers from across the council. And that's the role of that group, is to kind of just make sure that we're within the budget, we're meeting the guidance and updating in any key questions that we have along how the document should be produced, and really our role as the responsible authority in producing that document and what we need to cover off. We have various key partners to support the development of that, and they are the Wildlife Trust, the Nen Rivers Trust and the Northamptonshire Biological Record Centre. And we're all working together on various key aspects of the LNRS. Then underneath the oversight group, we have the Delivery Advisory Group. So again, that's similar partners to those I just mentioned, but also wider to include those from the Local Nature Partnership for Northamptonshire, and also farming representatives through the NFU and the CLA. And that the purpose of that group is to make sure that we are progressing as well, and we're meeting all the guidance, and we're being inclusive through the stakeholder engagement work. So earlier this year, we did a tour of sites that some of you were able to come along on, and we produced a supporting booklet, which you should all have had a copy of. If you haven't, we can circulate that again. And that was to look at sites that are already delivering nature improvements and biodiversity enhancements across the North Northants area, but also where we've got opportunities, not just on our own assets, but working but other partners, and where they can do more as well. We've developed a top trumps tool of all the important species in various habitats across Northamptonshire. So that is being used by West Northants and North Northants. And that's now all been finalised, and a booklet's been created, and that's being handed out at various engagement sessions that are being run just over the next couple of weeks. Because of the timelines, we've secured a dedicated resource to support with the writing of that document. They are an external consultant, but have worked in North Northamptonshire for some time on the planning side and landscape side. So they're ideal to really support us in pulling all of the information that's going to come in together. We also have developed a logo and strapline with West Northants. So if you can go on to the next slide, that will show the two logos that we have that work separately, and the strapline is Together with Nature. And the idea is that you can put before Together with Nature all manner of different aspects. So you could have development together with nature, or agriculture together with nature, to show that they've all got their own important aspects within them. But if we start to bring nature into all of those elements, then we'll get a much better outcome for everybody. And then if you just move on to the next slide, you'll show how these two logos come together quite nicely. And this is what we'll be using when we're doing all of our work together with West Northants, to show that we are working alongside each other, which makes sense because a lot of the bodies and agencies and charities work across that wider Northamptonshire area. So we're really pleased with that logo and that strapline. We've had some very positive feedback from Natural England on that. So some of you that were keen would have seen that on the opening slide in any case, but there you go. I just wanted to present that to you today. So if we just move on to the next one, thank you. The LNRS is made up of two areas. We have documentation and the maps. So the document itself will have a outline description of the area and its biodiversity, what the opportunities for recovery enhancing that biodiversity is, and then through stakeholder feedback and engagement, we'll really agree on those priorities as a consensus across the area. And with those priorities, we'll be identifying potential measures to help deliver those priorities and achieve those outcomes that we want to achieve. So bringing that all together gives us the statement of biodiversity priorities. And there's a lot of work going on this area at the moment, and I'll detail a little bit more when we talk about the stakeholder engagement. So on the next slide, this is taken from the description that the Wildlife Trust as a key partner have pulled together about what's important with the forest and the two valleys that two main valleys that we have in our area and why they're important. And it's also got some figures there of the various designations that we have across the area. There's quite a lot, and we've got a lot of mapping to support all of this, to show it spatially. So that's really there for information. It shows us what our baseline is and what we could be looking at expanding. So on the next slide, I think it goes into a bit more detail on the habitats, the important habitats we have. So they've got the woodland, grassland, wetland, farmland and urban area, and within that there's examples of the different sort of sub-habitats, if you like, but they're the 5 main ones that we really have within Northamptonshire, and there'll be further information and species associated with each of those sub-areas. And then on the next slide, this again has been pulled together by the Wildlife Trust as potential options for recovery. And I know there's a lot to take in on that slide, and hopefully you'll have copies of this, but it shows and this is all taken from existing documents that all manner of partners have been pulling together over the last several years. And it really talks about the main things that we think are still important and still have lots of opportunities to deliver and enhance more. So if you just take a look along across that list, there's quite a lot. I mean, improve the ecological status of river is a main one, and extend the area of woodlands are things that we've all been talking about for some time. So that's given us a really good starting platform to then talk with stakeholders about other potential options and how those can be delivered. Then on the next slide, we move forward onto the species side of it. So the Northants Record Centre have been doing a lot of work. They've done a long list of species that have been found in and this is all of Northamptonshire. And then so that's 1,334. And then they've been categorised in those A to E aspects there. The LNRS is only really associated with A and B, the ones that we know are and should be in this area. And that brings it down to 366 species. So the next step is to look at assemblages for each habitat. So a lot of those species can be found in a wide variety of different habitats across the area. So there is a workshop later this month with the Record Centre and the county recorders to drill into that information a little bit more, work out which are the key species for each of those habitats that we talked about earlier. And that will start to draw out if there's any iconic species, like the checkered skipper, for example, that's had a reintroduction, if we want to focus more on that, or other ones that might be coming forward as well. Then just moving on to the stakeholder engagement, this aspect has been undertaken by the Nen Rivers Trust. They have really good contacts across the area and have worked with partners for a great many years, delivering on a wide variety of different projects and really delivering well on those. So they're doing 3 workshops. We've had the first 2, and they're quite large external workshops with a whole variety of stakeholders. There's probably about 50 invited to each of them. The turnout hasn't been huge, but that doesn't mean to say that those stakeholders aren't inputting in different ways. So NRT, Nen Rivers Trust, will go out and they will do separate meetings with other groups. They've got one coming up for landowners, and we've done a couple of evening presentations, one in the north to a group of farmers and landowners interested in the LNRS and BNG. And they're also doing an online workshop with landowners, and another one with any interested town and parish councils that want to register for that. So whilst there's the 3 main workshops, there's lots of other stakeholder events going on alongside that. I mentioned the top trumps being used. in the next couple of weeks. So we have, there's a big guide event being held at Stanwick Lakes for all of the Northamptonshire guides. So they're going to be doing some specific engagement. That's mainly focused on the special protection area, but they're weaving into that the LNRS and getting their views and input through that. And also the STEAM event held at the university, where there's slightly older young people that will be able to engage and discuss and say what's important for them. So there's a whole raft of different engagement going on, but those 3 main workshops are the main focus where decisions are starting to be made on the content of the LNRS. So where we are at the moment after workshop 2 is having a long list of potential priorities and outcomes that want to be reviewed and looked at the next workshop. So as internal officers, we've had 2 internal workshops ourselves to feed into that process, and that's what's expected of those other people that are going along to those workshops, that they will engage with their wider groups and networks outside of those meetings, and then being able to feed back into it so that we get as full engagement as possible from those that are interested or working in or using the sort of nature and landscape of North Northamptonshire. So we could just move on to the next slide, please. So I mentioned mapping. That is another key area. It's a spatial document. We need to have maps to demonstrate all of those priority areas and baseline information that we've talked about before. So there is DEFRA have set out that there is a common data standards that is quite prescriptive, so that all of the LNRSs will provide their baseline information in the same way. So it can be looked at as a countrywide strategy. And then we will look at mapping areas that could be of particular importance following all of that stakeholder engagement. So that will flow out of workshop 3. So that one's, whilst the baseline is kind of there waiting, ready to go, a lot of that work will be done a little bit later. And we're using internal resource to support us with the mapping element of this. And just on to the next slide, please. Some of you that have come to presentations before will know that there have been pilot LNRSs done quite a few years ago now, and we've been reviewing those and understanding what's in some of those pilots that we like or what we don't like. We have looked at Cornwall as we feel it's usable and it's got lots of information for delivery partners. However, we're also picking up that there's some things where we can do better, and that's part of the discussions on how usable the document is for ourselves and partners and the different readers of the LNRS. But on the next slide, it just shows you an example of what the Cornwall document did look like, and they will be refreshing this for their next iteration. So this is just an example of wetland, and you can see on the left-hand side, there is, and I don't expect you to read it, it's more the layout of it and the flow of the story. So on the left-hand side, you've got a description of the wetland. In the little box, the green box at the top, you've got the target outcome of what we want our wetlands to be like. Underneath that, for this, and what we need to do ourselves and partners for that to happen. And then it's got some examples on the right-hand side. So you can see it really tells a story of here's our outcome, this is what we want to achieve, this is how we can do it, and this is how you do it, particularly on your land. And this will support these sort of species and have these wider multifunctional benefits of other natural capital aspects like these ones here on carbon and flood resilience and clean water. So that's kind of how we're looking at focusing it and really targeting down. And I think the Cornwall example was less than 40 pages long. It was really succinct, it was to the point. And I like that idea of it, so that we can then have that as a main document. We can also have supporting documentation and case studies alongside that as well for people that want to know more. We don't want to overburden any of the landowners, because a lot of them are only going to be very interested in one specific area. So we just move on to the next slide, please. So I mentioned before about the timetable of how we're going to get to March, which does seem a long way away. but we have to have 2 periods of consultation with Natural England, both of which for 28 days, and we have to have our public consultation for 6 weeks. So that starts to bring the timetable quite far forward, really. And we are looking at having a consultation draft ready in September. So that's why we've got resources and bringing together a team of people to really push forward and get this document written over the summer months and bring in all the feedback and stakeholder engagement that is needed, and whilst we're meeting the guidelines and guidance from DEFRA. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So the next steps is discussing, in order to that we can meet that timeline, having those internal resources with the design team, communications and the consultation team. They're all ready. They've all got it in their forward plans now, and we're working with the design team on how we can set out our document and template so that we can just put the text into it. The monthly, the oversight meetings were previously every 2 months. We're now having those monthly as the work starts to ramp up. And we're also working closely with Natural England. We have a senior advisor from them that is supporting us and West Northants, and they have various checklists and progress and a legal compliance checklist that they will be completing to make sure that we are meeting everything we want. And we speak to them probably every day at the moment with messages or whatnot to make sure that we are doing all of that, and they're fully supportive of the process that we're taking. And then I'm not sure how many slides are left, Raj. Oh yeah, this is the last slide. So it was if there was any questions that anybody wanted to raise on this, or my contact details are there. And we also have just a normal nature recovery email as well for other organisations to get in contact. I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Andrea. Let's see if we get some hands up. I'm sure we will. So we've got a virtual and a non-virtual hand gone up there. So I'll go to Councillor O'Hara first, and then we'll go to Councillor Coleman after that.
Just want to say thank you for the report. It's fabulous how much progress we've made. And I think for people nowadays, outdoor space is so important, and important that we protect it and enhance it. And I was probably a little bit of my planning head on, but I looked at Nans Ledden the other day, which is in Cornwall, and it's a fabulous development. It's done by King Charles. It's in the Duchy of Cornwall, and there the open spaces are incredible. So I'm glad that you're kind of looking at what they're doing down there, and we're learning from other areas, and what we find out what's best, and then we can enhance and improve. And I think together as a nation we can make it a lot better place to live in. So thank you for what you're doing. I think it's a fabulous report, and thank you for bringing it together today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Coleman, and then we'll go to Councillor Dell.
Thank you. Right, obviously I'm playing catch up, so I've been checking up all the acronyms and looking it all up. Yes, thank you. Very good document, and it was good to see that there's a lot happening. Please, could I ask for a booklet, because I haven't got one that was mentioned earlier. Apart from that, I'll come up with any questions if I think of them later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report there. And also thanks very much for the excellent tour round of the 4 sites. That was really, really, really good to see that. I do have a couple of questions. Firstly, I know you've obviously engaged with the Wildlife Trust, and I presume like Butterfly Conservation, Badger Group and all those kind of key stakeholders. I know there are very localised groups that have a lot of ecological knowledge about specific areas, but I'm presuming that their ecological knowledge would be covered by the MBRC because if everything's been, and then those records will be coming in. But I was wondering, is this specifically just for council-owned or public land, or is it land that's owned by landowners, for example, woodlands or those kind of areas? I know you said you're working with those key stakeholders as well, but I was wondering how much of that. And also, the second question was on the tour, biodiversity net gain was mentioned, and I was wondering how BNG relates to the LNRS. Thank you.
Yes, so with the Records Centre, yes, they should be having all of those sort of specialist groups submitting the data to them, and then that can be included within that. And we'll also have the public consultation, unless they're already in contact with the Nen Rivers Trust, to have specific dialogue with them and feeding into the other workshops. So if there's any specific ones that you have in mind, I could always make sure that they have been contacted or will be contacted when we have the wider consultation, which obviously will be public, but if they're on our database, they will get us a copy of it sent to them directly. So if they are interested, that nature recovery email would be the best one to go to, and then we can keep a record of it there. In relation to landowners, yes, we're looking at all of the land within North Northamptonshire. That's why we have to have quite good discussions with farmers and landowners and the estates, because they own most of the land that we have. So whilst council land, we do have our own assets, and there are things that we can be doing differently on those, and working closely with the environment team on that. We need to be clear, we're not dictating to landowners what they should be doing on the land, but should they be minded to do something different, these are the best things that they could do to have the best habitat and multifunctional improvement to that parcel of land, for example. So when I went to this farmer event in Nassington a few weeks ago, and they were saying, oh, well, we're looking at getting a farm cluster set up. We've got some land next to the river that always floods. Is there something that we can do along there? And yes, of course there is. Working together, doing some natural flood management within that area would be really beneficial, not just to their land, but other associated land downstream or upstream as well. So that is quite a key part, and probably the most difficult part in engaging with farmers at a time, well, they're busy all year round, aren't they? And they make decisions quite quickly, and especially the weather we've been having, the engagement hasn't been as good as we had hoped it to be, but we are putting on these extra events and having online meetings as well to make sure we get their views coming in. And then the last bit of that was around biodiversity net gain. So yes, biodiversity net gain is another key element of the LNRS. They work together. I'll now use the acronym BNG. So that is one way that the LNRS can be delivered. So if we're looking at strategically significant areas, for example, so these areas are very important for woodland creation. If there was a habitat bank coming forward in that area, we would say if you're providing woodland, you would get a strategic uplift in the metric, because you're providing something that the evidence is showing us is strategically significant. Likewise, if there's a development in an area that is strategically significant, they would then have to provide more as an offset if they're looking at it that way. So it is quite linked and intertwined, and there's lots of work going on both sides at the moment, and we do have various habitat banks coming forward, and we're going through as a council the process that we need to do that to make sure they're on the national register for sites. So that's all taking place.
Well, thank you.
Great, thank you for going through those various questions. So obviously the team are keen to engage with members of the EAP. Andrew, I don't know if there was something you wanted to say around that, just further engagement and really trying to get the most out of this with councillors.
Yes, so whilst we had our internal workshop, and we've had a couple of those now, wondering if councils would welcome a councillor workshop where we do look at potential outcomes and priorities and measures, and just have a short workshop really focusing in on some of those elements to get your knowledge of your areas and what you could feed into that, so that we are capturing all of those views early on in the process. Obviously, you'll still have the opportunities later on and through the public engagement side of it. But if there is a workshop that you would like us to put on, and it will have to be in the very near future in order to meet the feeding into the next external workshop at the beginning of July, then we can look at setting something up for councillors of this EAP.
Perfect, thank you. Well, I'm sure we can work on that, get feedback, and look at how we best go forward with that. But thank you again for going through that presentation. The local nature recovery strategy has an awful lot of potential, and I know that we've got lots of stakeholders working really hard alongside yourself and the team, Andra, to make this, you know, something really, really good for the area, really good for wildlife, and nature more broadly. So keep up the good work, and we look forward to hearing more about this as we progress through it. Thank you. Okie dokie. So we're going to go on to our next item, which is a bit of a presentation on the urban green space audit and strategy. So I've got Simon Richardson and John. I'm going to mispronounce your surname, I'm afraid. So we've got yourself.
It's Udall, just to help out.
Thank you. So we've got both of you down to present on this. Not sure how you're going to play it, but hand over to you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Penland. So I'll do the introductory element. We've got a presentation for you, so I'll take the first 5 slides or so. And then John will take you through a bit more of the meaty stuff in terms of some of the findings and some of the results that we've identified to date. So I may, if Raj is on standby, but I'll try and share the slide deck. And
it's okay, Simon, I'm sharing it.
Right, brilliant. I thought I'd done that. So thank you very much for that. So if I introduce myself, so Simon Richardson, I'm Head of Policy and Placemaking. John Udall. John's job title at the present time is a bit misleading. John has joined us from the High Street Has Heritage Action Zone project, where he was managing an awful lot of projects in Kettering Town Centre, and that plays out to be quite similar in terms of work tasks in relation to the urban green spaces. So we both work within the growth and regeneration team as a part of George's Place and Economy Directorate. So Raj, if you're able to go on to the next slide. Excellent, thank you very much. So looking at, I see it has E3. I should perhaps just explain what that is. So E3 is defined as focusing funds on blue and green space development for healthier urban futures. So in assessing scheme proposals, that's been a fundamental element of the work that's been undertaken to go about demonstrating and justifying the funding spend. So kicking off, we managed to secure as a council just over £1.5 million for this project through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The focus being on urban green spaces and improving them and their use, and increasing the use of those green spaces. So the 6 larger towns identified for that are Corby, Desborough, Kettering, Wellingborough, Rushden and Higham Ferrers. There's 3-staged approach to that, and I'll take you through those 3 stages in a moment. But in the first instance, there was an audit that was undertaken. The second element relates to creating a strategy and a programme of projects. Those 2 stages were to be complete by the end of March. We've extended that, though, into June, given the complexity of it, but it then moves us on to our third element, which is delivery of green space projects, capital projects. That spend needs to be completed by the end of March next year. So you see, when you then look at the third stage, we're shrinking that down, but in the background, we're ensuring that we're working towards a healthy flow, so there will be quick turnaround into delivery of projects. Some of those projects will need to be in the summer and autumn months, and some of those will need to be in the autumn and winter months. So it will be a full complex delivery of projects. Raj, we okay to move on to the audit slide? So in the first instance, we appointed specialist consultants, that being the Environment Partnership, or TEP. So they've taken the lead. They are specialists in urban green spaces. They've previously worked in the Wellingborough area a few years ago, but they do a lot of playing field studies, sports facilities, strategies, and green space proposals. So the draft report includes planning policy, so there's a focus there. And in that, it looks at local planning policies, it looks at the council's corporate plan, and looks at national and regional priorities for this area. Now, the Environment Partnership audited 97 sites in total, and with that, they looked at the quality and the value of spaces within Northamptonshire. Within those 6 towns is the focus. The quality assessment reflected on the condition and how those spaces were maintained, and on in terms of value, they looked at multifunctionality in terms of play, sense of place, and biodiversity. Now, through that assessment, and it is a technically recognised assessment, there were no sites that were assessed as excellent or very good. There were, however, 28 sites that were rated good and 59 as fair. So the reading there, I think, is that most sites were of low value for that assessment. So it provides the opportunity for lots of targeted improvements to those urban spaces. The next slide, please, if you would. Brilliant, thank you. So looking at the consultation headlines. So this involved both targeted consultation and consultation that went out to the general public. Our consultants were satisfied with the feedback that was received, so there was a decent response. A total of 290 responses were made to the resident survey. It ran over a month, I think it was, maybe just over. As a part of that, it's quite a lengthy questionnaire, so some respondents picked their way through the elements that had particular interest for them. Others focused on the full survey response. So 34% of visitors used the urban green spaces 2 or 3 days a week, and 29% used the green spaces most weeks. So useful information was received on the connectivity of the spaces. It was general agreement with the sites selected, so that was an agreement between those who responded to the consultation, and a workshop that I'll cover in a moment, involving officers. And then there was a variety in terms of recreation, play, and options for improving wildlife habitats. So it wasn't just that we are happy with the level of response, it was the quality of the response that came back as well was very helpful. So then, Raj, if you're okay to move on to the visioning workshop element, thank you. So we also held a visioning workshop with the council's own staff. So included within that was those that are perhaps have specific focus in or cover urban green spaces. So that included members of the planning policy team. It's included cut across grounds maintenance staff, included community services members and leisure team members. This went well with lots of contributions from colleagues. A combined very long list of projects was made up, and projects were keenly spread, I suppose, across each of the Northamptonshire towns, and included within that the left behind communities within those towns with them, that being Kettering, Corby and Wellingborough. There's also a good mix in terms of investing in proposals around play and improvement to wildlife habitat and provision. So the Environment Partnership are ranking the projects and also are reviewing funding opportunities beyond the spend identified through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So the idea being that that funding can go about delivering a number of the projects, a large number of the projects, to be fair, but through the development of the strategy, the wish is to create a legacy document, something that can be become further attractive in creating bids for other funding to continue that investment in our urban green spaces. I think at this point, John, am I handing over to you to pick up a bit on the vision and a bit more about the most recent findings?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So Raj, next slide, thank you very much. So what we have now is a draft strategy and vision document. And this is a little snippet from it in terms of the vision. And we also have, which I'll come on to shortly, is a list of projects that we are getting priced up and working on and working out which ones, all of which is subject to approval by the UK SPF panel. So all of these bits are not signed off yet, but they are in draft form. So you can see the vision is what you'd expect, really. We want welcoming and well-managed green spaces, but for both people and wildlife. It's important that both are looked after, if you like, and that's backed up with investment, links to stakeholders and management plans where possible. So next slide, please, Raj. Thank you. So the strategy to actually achieve that involves, as it says here, a robust and collaborative approach, ensuring sufficient open space provision, uplifting quality, ensuring new developments provide new provision or contribute to existing, getting value for money for all the work that we're doing, and working with external partners as well. Raj, please, next slide. So yeah, so like Simon said, we looked at 97 sites. However, we've got projects numbering far more than that, because there are several sites that will have a number of projects on them. It might be installing play areas, it might be improving habitats, all at the same space. So we have identified so far 137 projects that would fit the UK SPF funding guidelines. We've got 70 that are just general maintenance, so wouldn't fit the funding criteria. 17 projects that will work with UK SPF, but not in the timescales of this project. And then we're still working on some final projects, and 31 projects that'll fit in, hopefully, to the UK SPF funding projects. So we gathered all those from the site audits and the consultations that we've done. Next slide, please, Raj. So what a lot of people ask us, well, is how's that spread across the 6 sites? I think it's important to recognise that the 6 sites are defined as urban by the UK SPF fund. So we couldn't pick any other sites, Rothwell, for example. It doesn't fit the criteria, so it has to be these 6 sites. There's 7 boards bars there, because one is just general, and I'll come to that in a moment, but the general ones cover sites across all of the areas. Higham and Rushden currently on this graph looks very under represented, but they are in the 31 finalised projects at the moment, because those green spaces in those 2 towns are managed by the town council. So we're working with the town council to bring those projects forward. Apart from that, the spread is quite reasonable across Corby, Desborough, Kettering and Wellingborough. So next one, please, Raj. So these are the type of projects, and this isn't a complete list by any means. That this is just to give you a flavour of the type of projects that we've got in the pipeline at the moment. So there's a few general ones there. So one is at the top there, urban seating. So this is all the benches, etc., in parks, and we haven't quite finalised exactly which parks and how much, where, and all the rest of it. They all go, so it's still in the general category. And similar for grassland and wildflower meadows, and tree planting, butterfly banks. These are all general that will cover across lots of different areas. And you've probably seen where we've already got, for example, butterfly banks, wildflower meadows in places in Corby, for example. There's a couple of maintenance capital investments, if you like. One's a robot mower, and there's another one for another type of mower that again are general. They will cover lots of areas and are part of the requirement to achieve what we're looking to do. There's a couple of sites here in Wellingborough and Corby, but there are lots of other sites in other places as well. Next, please, Raj. So other projects include on the list here. So we've got Rushden, Corby, Rushden again, Wellingborough, Kettering, Desborough, and Rushden again. So you can see where the Rushden ones fit in at the moment. These aren't finalised yet, but they are in the pipeline. Next one, please, Raj. And what the UK SPF panel now needs to do is, with that list, is consider lots of different factors in scoring them or weighting them, so that we can prioritise and make sure we're working with the right ones. So the types of things we're looking at here, obviously cost, who's delivering it, because that makes a big difference to how quickly we can deliver it. The spread across the urban areas, who suggested, whether it's come from stakeholders or from the audit or from community, whether it's habitat improvements or play areas or dog walking facilities, just bins and benches, where it's improved recreation or sports facilities, or even event space. These are all useful. These are all the types of things that we in the panel will be looking at to put together a final list for approval. Next, please, Raj. So this finalising strategy, where we are, where we're getting to, is, like I say, we need to put together the project plan for the delivery. The panel needs to sign it off, and then we can commence, as Simon said, with the summer projects. We've got really tight timescales really on this, because we've got to have completed stuff by March next year. So we will be looking to jump straight into getting some projects going straight away, and then planning the autumn winter projects so that it can all be completed in timescales. Obviously, there'll be regular updates to the panel and obviously updates to the general public via press release and social media. So, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you both for taking us through that. It's really useful to get updates from different areas that we might not have thought about before, and auditing of green spaces might not have necessarily crossed people's minds. But it's good to hear about the shared prosperity fund projects that are going on across the area and the variety in them. The robot mower was certainly interesting to read there. So as per usual, please do stick hands up for questions. We've got a couple going up. So we'll go to Councillor Dell first, followed by Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, guys, for the presentation. That was really, really useful to see, and good to see there's some funding coming in. I had a couple of questions. First one was the environmental part, the TEP report. It said we didn't get an excellent or a very good on any of our parks. So I was wondering how that rating is related to green flag parks. So obviously we've got a few green flag parks around the country. Obviously there's different criteria to get a green flag, and I was just wondering if those good or fair ratings would affect the future green flag rating of those parks, and also how the marking criteria was different. And secondly, it wasn't a question actually, it was just a comment. It was nice to see that there's a little note about bike racks there, because in my day job we recently did a map of Kettering and was surprised to find there's only actually a couple of parks that actually had bike racks in, which surprised me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we bike racks is something that was picked up on as obviously an important part of the what we're doing, because how people get to these sites is really important. There's any improvement to accessibility, and if people won't go to a park if they can't safely lock their bike up while they're enjoying the park, so you know that's as I'm sure you know. The other question is probably a bit more technical, and to be honest, I don't think Simon or I can answer that. I think Rebecca from TEP would be the perfect person to answer that, and she's not here today. But what I will do, I'll write that down, and I'll come back to you if that's okay, and we'll be able to explain that. Then.
I think what I can add, I know TEP undertake that the assessments of green flags as well. So I think that the technique they used or have used is the same or very similar. But it's a good question in terms of what we don't want to find is that we've taken our eye off the ball, for example, on any parks that are already green flagged. So we'll come back to you on that, but we'll certainly ensure. I mean, we're looking for a general uplift in the quality of the park environment, and perhaps the range of uses that you have within them. I mean, I know, through everyday life, as for example, your children grow up, you need equipment for one age and then equipment for the next age, and then no equipment at all. So if you can provide a range of opportunities within that environment for using that space, including just being within that space, sitting there comfortably, contemplating, listening to the birds, watching the wildlife, it adds so much value that you don't actually stop to think about that. And with it locationally being within the urban environment, what we're looking to do is enhance these spaces because it's on so many people's doorsteps. So they've not got to go out and explore and find it. It's there. So if we can strengthen that environment so that people can benefit from that green environment, that natural environment on their doorstep, then there's so much more added value. There's more in terms as well as of being able to see people and meet with people and talk to people. And then that added element that John referred to in terms of events. I think it'd be great if we can strengthen it, whether it's park run, whether it's local fetes, whether it's use by schools or groups, or town-wide activities using some of these spaces, and how they link. All very important. That they are they're sort of a natural resource, aren't they? But they can be uplifted so that they become a greater resource for all that wish to use them, and that's the efforts that we're making through this project to go about improving them significantly.
Thank you, Simon, both of you there. Councillor O'Hara.
Thanks for that, Simon. I think that was a good interpretation, really. I think the difference between the TEP and the having a green flag, if you like, is more to do with perception, as in cleanliness, etc. It's the maintenance of, isn't it? Whereas what TEP's doing is what value do we get? What can you do within that open space, within that park area? And I think throughout all our areas, I mean, Corby's a good example. They put a fantastic play area in, and I've forgotten the name of the park. It's down just as you come out of the town and you take a right, just off the roundabout there. So they've got a lovely play area for all ages, and then there's a massive open space and you can walk into woodlands, and that's great for being out on your bike. And similarly over this way, you can ride through Kettering and you can go out to Twywell Hills and Dales, and then from there you can ride through and down the old cinder path where the railway used to be, and it brings you out to Stanwick Lakes. And I ride that. Got a little 3-year-old on the back of my bike, but it's quite safe down there once you come off through if you come out through the villages on a Sunday morning. If you're going about 6-7 o'clock in the morning, there's not much traffic around, and it's good to do that. But I think it's important, if you look at Stanwick Lakes, it's got everything. It's got a fantastic play area, and it's got big open spaces, and you can just keep walking for miles and not particularly see an awful lot of people. But it's got the diversity of the water, same as Market Harborough. It's got something for the little children, but it's also got that space that adults can, or teenagers even, can exercise. But I find that the little ones want to go on that open gym, and we've got that in Desborough. And that was a hard push to get that. They had to use funding and precept for that. And I think that's what's important in these open spaces. And I think with new developments that's come forward, I think it's important that we look at those open spaces and maintain and retain them, and not allow people to come along and say, well, actually we can shove another 2 houses there, which we're very good at doing and making sure we look after them. But I think it's about more than that. I think it's more about looking at what goes in there, what kind of leaps goes in. And you only have to look at Priors Hall and look at the play area they've got there, and they've got like a zip line and fantastic equipment. And then you look at some of the ones that have been built here by various developers, and they've tried to go for materials that would be acceptable in the world that we're living in at the minute, instead of the longevity. If you put in a metal structure, it's got longevity and it can be maintained. Whereas a wooden structure, if it's not maintained, if it's not protected, it will rot. And it's getting that balance right. And I think that's what we're talking about. And even that down to having the open space and being able to have that quietude, having that space. Like you've got at Chester Park, you've got fantastic play area again. But you've also got the areas where you can go walking, you can see wildlife, there's deer down there, you can go off track, go to the left, you can go off on the mountain bikes and go up and down the hills without bothering anybody. But if you go to the right, a lot of people are walking through there. So I think we've done a fantastic job, and I'm disappointed to note that we didn't get some really good markings for the ones that we've tried to do within our urban areas. And then for the bigger areas, they've got the benefit of having that extra space to be able to deliver what I think would be a fantastic rating. So I'd be interested to have a look at those comments. I don't know if they're available, John or Simon, whether I could have a look and see what we're planning to do, and whether this group could have some input on our thoughts, because obviously we've all got children, we've all got family, etc. And I think it'd be fantastic for us to kind of win awards for all of our parks, for it, just not as in an award off a governing body. I just meant an award off the people that we're serving, and the communities that we live in, to have a fantastic open space. And at the end of the day, it helps with people's mental well-being, and that then stops them having to go to a doctor or wherever. That having that open space is so very important nowadays. But I think this, what we're doing is amazing, and thank you for what you're doing and to all the team that are helping to deliver this. And it's a really tight timescale, but I think we've built a good foundation from what we did through Powering Policy. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So yeah, all good things to hear, and I'm glad that that the project seems to be on the right track. It's very pleasing to hear. So in terms of interest in coming back, we'll be only too happy to bring something back to you. We're very keen, obviously, to go about firming up the projects, the main projects that come forward. So we're looking to go back to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund panel to agree that it may be in full, it may not quite be in full, but I think as we go about moving through to delivery, there's always the potential for shift in projects. As you find, there may be constraints in some instances, there may be overspends in some, there may be underspends in some. So I see it as being a living delivery project, and it may well be that we're able to bring back to yourselves an update on the progress that's being made with delivery, but more than that, to bring back to you any possible or proposed changes for any views or comments. I mean, it would be useful if over time the strategy and the delivery of that strategy is a living document, and we're able to go about sourcing funds, whether that be further funds through natural habitats and improving the spaces through those funding streams, or whether it be through sport and leisure investment opportunities as and if and when they come about. So yes, we'd like to be able to come back to you and provide you with an update, but also seek any further input. I was interested in I think some of the scoring, I think they're tough markers, if I'm honest. So we may have some very good spaces within Northamptonshire, but because the grade is like A star if you're in school environment, then it might be that that's what's needed for it to be excellent. What I'm interested in though is those spaces within Northamptonshire or any spaces outside of Northamptonshire that people are familiar with or visit, and say, do you know what? If we could have one of those, then that's a good place to be. So if there is anything that you think they do this particularly well elsewhere, we'd be only too happy to hear that, and we'll see if we can't go about fashioning something that helps us to go about identifying that and then delivering it.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor O'Hara, did you want to come back in there?
Actually, to be honest, Harry, thank you. Simon's answered it really. It was about funding, whether we could reallocate funding, and because invariably if you get funding and it's for a specific project, if there's an under or overspend on it, obviously an overspend, where would we get the extra from? But if there's an underspend, can we allocate it to another project that's perhaps has got an overspend? Because normally it's specific, and that you have to show what you spent it on and how you've utilised the funds. So I think kind of Simon's really answered that. But I was laughing because I could think of a few ideas, but most of them probably, excuse me, are around paddleboarding, and I can't see anybody taking me a great big lake anytime soon, unless we want some more water retention, like Grafton Water or somewhere. And it made me smile because Des's little cat was kept trying to tickle him to get his attention. So, but yeah, thank you, Simon. And I think I know the answer, that we can I hope we can reallocate funding, but it usually is, what have you used it for, and let's see the evidence. But I would hope that, if it comes from a different fund, whether it comes from nature or from sport or whichever, that the sensible answer would be given, yes, we've used it here because, and we'd tie it in somehow so it fits the criteria for which we gain the funding.
Great. Thank you, Councillor O'Hara, for the input there, and to other members. Simon, John, thank you very much again for that presentation, really useful. And as always, look forward to hearing more as and when is appropriate as part of the panel. So that brings us to the end of our meeting today. Again, thank you to all our members, new faces as well, for your contributions today, which really help with the EAP and the presentations, etc., that we're looking at to feed into those. The next meeting is in August, and we will circulate the agenda for that closer to the time. Look forward to seeing you all then, and have a good rest of the day.